lovely people, welcome back to my channel, or hello if you're new here. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Today's video is going to be in honour of Valentine's Day. I'm going to be talking about 10 books that you should add to your TBR. 10 romance books, I should probably specify, that you should be adding to TBR because these books are all incredible. I loved them so much when I read them and I want to share them to you guys. So I've kind of picked 10 of my favourite romance books that are sitting on my shelf, and we're going to run through them, tell you a little bit about each one. I feel like as of recently I've really come into my reading taste and I've realised how much I genuinely love romance books. So if you guys have any amazing romance recommendations, please let me know. I would literally love to add them all to my TBR. I am always looking for new romance books, to be honest. I feel like romance is it's just such a good genre. Honestly, never let anyone tell you that you're not reading proper books because you're reading romance, because that is the silliest statement I have quite literally ever heard in my entire life. So without further ado, let's get into today's video and talk about romance books. My favourite thing to talk about, to be honest. This is our stack of books today that I'm going to be running through. What a lovely sight. I'm going to kind of run through them in no particular order. I'm not going to go from like least fave to most fave because I honestly love all of these books so much. So we're just going to run through them and talk about them, I guess. They're all quite different, I feel. We're going to start off with Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This book is one of my all-time favourite books in the entire world. I love it so much. I understand it's got quite a lot of kind of mixed opinions. Some people hate it, some people love it. I fall into the bracket of loving this series, the Boys of Tommen series. I absolutely love it. Currently there are 5 books out, but I do believe that Chloe Walsh is releasing quite a few more. One thing I will say is definitely check your trigger warnings before delving into this series, because it's a very hard-hitting, very heavy series. There's a lot of heavy topics in here, a lot of heavy content, and I feel like if you're not in the best state of mind, you probably shouldn't pick this one up. Like, don't pick this book up thinking, oh, it's going to be a cutesy happy time, because you will be so shocked and you will not get that. This series basically follows a group of friends. It's set in Ireland, and each book is kind of about a different couple or a different character. This one is about Johnny and Shannon. They are the first couple, and the first 2 books follow them. So there's Binding and Keeping 13, and then there's Saving and Redeeming 6, which is Joey and Aoife's story. Joey is Shannon's older brother, and then you have Taming 7, which is Gibbsy, Johnny's best friend, Gibbsy and Claire's book. So that's the current ones that are out. I love them all equally, to be honest. This is a 5-star series for me, but I just thought I'd introduce the first book because it's a good place to start. Shannon comes from a very horrible home life. She doesn't have a good time at all at home. She's not got that strong upbringing. Her parents are honestly letting her down every day so astronomically, and she gets moved to a new school because she's been bullied at her old school. So she gets moved to this, I think it's like a private school, and then she meets Johnny. I'm not going to say too much because I feel like with this series it's a chunky one. You need to go in and you need to find everything out yourself. However, she moves to Tommen School, and that is where she meets her friend and Johnny, and that's where the story takes off. But honestly, if you're looking for a long series where the books are all so packed with detail and events that happen, where you've got such incredible found family, then I really recommend Binding 13. Next up, I have 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. If you are looking for a more emotional story that's kind of a bit more poetic feeling, the writing style in this definitely feels very deep and poetic. This one has such an interesting concept. It's basically about 2 writers who knew each other when they was a lot younger, and now they're kind of these esteemed writers. Our female main character is a fantasy author, and our male main character is this sort of mysterious author who releases a book every so many years, and everyone goes crazy because he doesn't do many press releases, and he's got this really aloof persona. However, this whole time they have been writing about each other, and the main characters in each of the series or each of those books are each other, which I just think is so interesting, like such an interesting place to begin. And they meet after so many years and they're like, can you stop writing about me please? I do not appreciate it. And the other person is like, no, you stop writing about me. And then they're like, oh, we've been writing about each other this whole time. And we kind of see them revisit the past, introduce each other to their new selves, because obviously they're a lot older, so they've changed, but then some things haven't changed. And I think the way that it's written is honestly just so poetic, and it really like makes you feel right there in the heart, and I definitely recommend this. Next up, as you know, I'm a small town romance girly. If you watch me, you probably know that I'm obsessed with small town romances. I'm obsessed with cowboy romances. Put me on a ranch and I'll be sound. This book is Holding the Reins by Paisley Hope. I read this one very recently. It was in a vlog I posted a couple videos back. I really enjoyed this book. Like, I have never read a Paisley Hope book before, and I'm always on the lookout for new cowboy romances, and I got recommended this one and I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. I've seen this one on TikTok a little bit and it did not disappoint. This one is spicy and it will make you think, wow, Nash he's chef's kiss. He's up there with top book boyfriends for small town romance, in the small town romance subgenre. So this one follows Nash. He is a retired hockey player, so he's not only a cowboy, he's a hockey player as well. We're really getting the best of both worlds with this one. He's a hockey player, and then we follow Cece, who has moved back to her hometown because she's escaping a horrible relationship and she's trying to find herself again, and she is looking for a job. And Nash, funnily enough, has a job opening in his skating rink, so she is there as a marketing manager, I believe. So they're working together, so it's like forced proximity, it's spicy, we've got tension, it's best friend's little sister, yeah, is that right? Or it's brother's best friend, however you want to look at that. They have known each other forever, basically. Nash kind of he comes from like a bit of a traumatic past, so he considers Cece's family as his own, and he's kind of grown up alongside her brothers. So we've got that aspect, they're kind of sneaking around, and yeah, overall I think that the way that Paisley Hope writes is super bingeable, and it will make you want to immediately keep on reading and going into the next book. Okay, next book, Hear Me Out. I know that it's February, however, yeah, this one says 7 Summers. It's 7 Summers by Paige Toon. This one is arguably my favourite ever romance book to this date. Let that sink in. I know, that's kind of a bold statement, I feel. This one is my favourite ever romance book. I read it, and at the start, like, I'd kind of come off the back of reading a really great book and I was in a bit of a slump. I was like, oh, nothing's gonna live up to that one. And then I was like 4 pages in, I was like, oh, like, can't be bothered to read anything else, it's not gonna live up. And then I carried on reading and I was like, and then before you know it, I'd finished the book and I was like, wow, that was my favourite romance I've ever read. This book has stayed with me. I love the way that Paige Toon writes. She told this story incredibly. It has past and present timeline. It basically follows 2 characters over 6 summers. These characters meet when they are, I feel like, fresh out of uni, that type of age range, and they meet at a bar, they kind of hit it off and they're like, wow, like, really love spending time with you. Then something horrible happens. He moves to LA to pursue his music career. She stays in Cornwall, I believe. So it's kind of like also a beachy vibe, which I really liked the atmosphere. But she stays there, and then they have this pull to each other. And every summer they decide that they want to meet up because they just can't get each other out of their heads. And they meet up for the whole summer, every summer, and then stuff gets in the way. She meets someone else. Lots of stuff happens, and to be honest, like, I sobbed multiple times. It was so sad in places. It took me by such surprise. I will forever recommend this book because it was just a beautiful story. I feel like the way it was very unique, and the way that it was written was so heartfelt and meaningful, and I loved how we got the you know, we're seeing them over so many summers, we're seeing them really develop as characters, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Next up, we've got a hockey romance. This is Behind the Net by Stephanie Archer. This again is a recent read from me. I really enjoyed it. I think that this one deserves the hype that it gets on TikTok because it was the cutest hockey romance ever. The main guy, what is his name? Okay, why can I never find their names when I'm trying to... Jamie. So this follows Jamie. He is honestly such a golden retriever, but he's also got this like protective side to him. So not only is he this like happy go lucky character, he's also this like kind of broody protective guy, and you see in him be this golden retriever around her, and then around everyone else he's kind of like, oh, like I don't want to hang out with you, I'm super moody. And I was like, I'm loving this. I think that the way that Stephanie Archer writes is definitely very bingeable. If you couldn't tell, I love a bingeable book. I just do. I think I'm here for a good time, I'm here for the vibes, and that's what you'll find with my book recs. So this book follows our female main character. She's looking for a job. She really is kind of like, I'll take anything, and she takes on a job as a personal assistant, or just an assistant, to Jamie. She doesn't know it's going to be Jamie, she just goes through an agency. She shows up at his house or his apartment, and when she gets there she's like, oh my gosh, and he's like, and they're kind of just having this moment because it turns out they both had crushes on each other in high school, but neither of them knew. So now they're like, this is awkward, but he doesn't know I like him, but she doesn't know I like her, and it's all this one big thing. And she ends up being his live-in assistant, so she's now living in his apartment, so it's forced proximity. It's like they've always had a crush on each other, and the way that it was written was just so cute. Also, our female main character is kind of becoming her own person again. She's getting out of a bad relationship, she's trying to establish her music career, and I feel like the way that it was written not only focused on the romance, but it also focused on how he was making her into a better person, and she was becoming this independent woman who knew her worth. Let's just get the elephant out of the room. The next rec is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This book is honestly one of my all-time favourite romance books. Unlike the others, this one you shouldn't go into expecting like a cutesy, fluffy, romantic time, because you're not going to get that. This one feels very real. It's almost like a character study on characters that are definitely not perfect. They've got toxic relationships, and we're following them in their kind of quest to become better people, navigate life, and develop their relationships out of the toxic stage. We start off at a pretty low point, I won't lie, but as the series goes on you do see a lot of character development. So I think if you read this one and you think like, whoa, that was too toxic for me, give the other books a go, because we do see a lot of development throughout the series, and by the end you're just like, wow, I love these characters. I think the way that Jessa Hastings writes is very poetic, and honestly she just describes things so well. It makes you think like, wow, that was a beautiful sentence. And I think if you were to tab it, you could find so many amazing quotes in this series. But it is essentially rich people drama. It's rich people living in London and their relationships and their drama, and they're kind of obnoxious and they're just so incredibly rich that you're like, wow, I do not relate. And I'm like sat here like, wow, like whoa, but it's just the best thing ever. Like I can't wait for the next book to come out in this series. Jessa, please release it, please. But if you are someone that likes Made in Chelsea or like reality TV style shows that focus on like just rich people doing rich people drama, if you like that, and then you also like character study type books like Normal People, then I think you're gonna like this, because it's kind of that vibe. And please read this book. The next book rec is How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwang. This one is a book that I kind of saw circulating YouTube and Book Talk for quite a while, because the author of this is the screenwriter for Emily Henry's film coming out, I believe. I'm not sure which film it actually is, but she's definitely Emily Henry's screenwriter. So everyone was kind of talking about it and reading it, seeing if it was a bit like Emily Henry, and I do think that it is in similar vein to Emily Henry's books, and I really enjoyed this. I was reading it and I felt like when I wasn't reading the book, I was thinking about picking it up and finishing it, and I was always kind of like thinking about it and the characters, because with this love story it felt very deep and surprisingly impactful and surprisingly emotional. Because from the cover you kind of get like a rom-com vibe, but honestly from reading it I was like, wow, this is really deep, surprisingly. And you're not just getting two characters that fall in love and live happily ever after, we're getting two real people who have very real problems going on in their own lives and very kind of sometimes problematic complexes going on, and they are learning to love each other, and it was very beautiful to see. It felt very real, it felt like a real life romance story. It essentially follows our female main character, who is a book writer, and she's being picked up to have her book turned into a TV series or a film, whatever, and Grant is going to be the guy who's on the screenwriting team. However, these two characters already know each other. I'm not going to say why because I don't think it mentions in the blurb. However, their history is very, very messy, and the reason that they know each other is quite insane actually, and it really lends into how messy their love story is at times. But if you're looking for a Emily Henry-esque book that is quite impactful, quite deep, and doesn't always focus on the love story but also focuses on the characters as well, just as much on their own, I would definitely recommend How to End a Love Story. Now, I couldn't do one of these videos without mentioning Ali Hazelwood. She's one of my favourite romance authors. I am trying to slowly but surely work my way through her backlist. I think I've read The Love Hypothesis, Not in Love, Bride, and Love Theoretically, and I'm currently reading Deep End for my book club. I think after this one I have her like novellas, and then I have Love on the Brain and Checkmate, and then I've read her backlist, which is crazy because I love her books so much. This one, when it came out, everyone was like, this is her smuttiest book, it's just spice the whole way through. I disagree so much on that statement, because I think, one, this book to me didn't feel that spicy. Maybe I'm forgetting. It has been a while since I read it, but I didn't think it was like particularly anything crazier than Love Hypothesis or Love Theoretically. It was like a smidgen more spicy. Maybe like a little bit more spicy, but nothing like insanely more spicy. I'm not sure. And the reason that this one is marketed as more of like a spicy book is because the characters are essentially, they kind of need the spice to lend into their romance, and the way that they kind of develop their relationship is through spice. Like, they kind of start by having a physical relationship to make it into more of an emotional relationship, and you do understand that as you're reading it. You see why that is the case. But this story follows Rue, who works for a company. It's all like women in STEM. It's like the STEM fiction that she writes. I'm not sure like the lingo, but she works for someone, and it's like biotech engineer, I believe. She works, and then Eli and his team are trying to buy the company, but she is really good friends with the owner of the company, and she's not very happy, and she's like, stop coming in here and stealing this company, you're making my life horrible, and all this stuff. But they did actually meet the night before he tries to buy the company. I'm not sure how, but they met, and then they kind of spilled loads of secrets to each other, and then as you can imagine, the next day she gets to work, he's there, and she's like, what's going on, why is this man here? But I feel like out of all of her books, this one is maybe the one that's the most deep. It kind of follows like our main characters navigating their own mental barriers and learning to help each other and sort of overcoming things that have been preventing them from finding love for this whole time. I think that the characters in this book have a lot of chemistry, and I just love the way that Ali Hazelwood writes like the inner monologue of our main characters. She always writes in a way of like, it's quite quippy and quite funny, and you're like, haha, like it's like little comments where you're like, yeah, that's funny, and she like lightens the mood, and she makes the characters kind of awkward but in a funny way, and I love that. It definitely feels a little bit lighter when we're talking about such deep issues. The second to last book I'm going to talk about is The 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This one is from the author of The Dead Romantics, which is again another amazing book. I've not read anything else from Ashley Poston other than those two books, but I would like to. However, I feel like her latest book did not receive the best feedback, so I'm a little nervous to go into that one. This romance book is for anyone who is wanting a plot that is not like any other romance book. It's very unique, it's very different, and you will be left thinking, wow, that is a breath of fresh air, because it feels like no other romance book I've ever read. It basically follows a girl called Clementine, and she goes to live in her aunt's apartment. Her aunt recently passed away, so she's living there because it's close to work and all this stuff. And essentially she gets back from work one day and there's this guy in the apartment, and she's like, whoa, please leave my apartment, like I don't know who you are, get out. And he's like, what? I'm in my apartment, like I'm living here. And then it turns out that by some kind of magic, he is living in the apartment 7 years in the past. So they're kind of coexisting in the walls of the apartment, but 7 years apart, if that makes sense. So Ashley Poston always kind of writes in a little bit of magical realism, which I do thoroughly enjoy. It kind of makes it a little bit more unique and a little bit more entertaining. So they can only really conversate and build up a relationship within the apartment, which is definitely interesting. And yeah, whenever she gets home from work, she's like looking forward to seeing him, and he's always there, and they like have dinner together, and they have such a sweet romance. This one is definitely like a sweet romantic love story, and it's very unique. I really enjoyed it. I loved the characters. There were some great quotes in here, and I think that Ashley Poston always kills it with making such a impactful love story within such a short amount of pages. And the last book rec I'm going to talk about today is Lost and Lassoed by Lassoed. This is the third book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, so it's kind of cheating because I'm recommending the third book in the series. However, it's my favourite. It was my favourite in the series. I read it very recently and thoroughly enjoyed it. I think that because this one was so anticipated for, I feel, everyone when reading the Rebel Blue Ranch series, it hit so much harder. If you didn't know, the Rebel Blue Ranch series is almost like Chestnut Springs. It's following a ranch, I think in Wyoming. It's got found family, it's got like the cute scenic vibes, it's got siblings, it's following loads of different interconnected romance stories between the couples, and this one you kind of get glimpses of throughout book 1 and book 2, and the whole time you kind of left thinking like, I can't wait to get to their story. They've got like this banter going on throughout all the books. It's like a dislike to lovers. It's a brother, I always get like these sayings mixed up. It's a best friend's brother romance, so her best friend, it's her brother, and they've always had this like thing going on where they're like, I don't like you because you're a bad influence on my sister, and she's like, stop being grumpy, I don't like you. But this whole time it's kind of like, oh, you can see the chemistry between them, and you know that they've got this amazing spark. So the whole way through you're like, you guys, you can't fool us, you love each other. And I loved every second of this book. I think the way that Lassoed writes such great stories within like literally 300 pages is a real talent and a real skill, because I felt like I learned so much about each character and in literally this amount of pages. Like, that's incredible. And I think her books are great for if you're in a reading slump, or you just want something that's going to be quick and fun and entertaining and you're going to love the characters. This is the series for you. Also, the covers are just, I mean, I have these displayed facing outwards on my shelf because I love them that much. And these are all the romance books that I'm going to recommend today. Let me know if you are going to add any of these to your TBR. I hope that you can find some book recs within this list. As always, please let me know if you have any romance book recs for me to add to mine. I'm always looking to branch out and broaden my TBR. I specifically really want to, within the romance genre, I really want to start reading dark romance, but I'm just a little bit lost on where to start because I've never read dark romance before, so I literally don't know where a good starting place would be. I don't know what author to start with, I don't know what series to start with, but I really want to get into dark romance or maybe some mafia romance, one of the two. I'm a fish out of water. I don't really know where to start. So if you have any recs for that, please do let me know. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope that you all have a great Valentine's Day or a great week in general. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It really helps me out. Thank you again. I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.